One day, when her husband was away from home, she closed the doors and invited Yusuf to her. The story of Prophet Yusuf. Prophet Yusuf Alaihissalam was the beloved son of Prophet Yaqub Alaihissalam, who also had 11 other sons. Binyamin, who was the youngest, was from the same mother as Yusuf, while the rest were older half-brothers. Yusuf Alaihissalam, still a young boy, awoke one glorious morning delighted by a pleasant dream he just had. He ran to his father in excitement and said, "O my father, indeed I have seen 11 stars and the sun and the moon. I saw them prostrating to me." Yaqub was overjoyed at the realization that his dear son was indeed chosen by Allah to be bestowed with prophethood. However, Yaqub was concerned about his older son's possible reaction to this narration, for even though he treated them equally, they harbored jealousy towards Yusuf. He therefore warned Yusuf against relating his dream to his brothers, lest they plot for his downfall. With time, the malice in the hearts of Yusuf's brothers kept growing. They envied Yusuf because they felt he was special, and they were not. Unable to handle their emotions, they devised a plan to get rid of Yusuf by throwing him into a well. So one day, they approached their father and asked whether Yusuf could come out with them to play. A very reluctant Yaqub said, "Indeed, it saddens me that you should take him, and I fear that a wolf would eat him, while you are of him unaware." Surah Yusuf, Ayah 12-13. But the older brothers insisted that they would take extreme care of him, and that Yusuf would enjoy himself. The next day Yusuf set off with his brothers. They traveled far in pursuit of a well deep enough to throw their brother in. When they finally reached the well, on the pretext of drinking water, they led him to it, grabbed him, and removed his shirt. Yusuf began struggling and pleaded with them to let go. The brothers eventually outpowered Yusuf, threw him down the well, and rushed back home. The brothers ran to their father, carrying Yusuf's shirt that was smeared with sheep's blood. They cried, "O our father, indeed we went racing with each other and left Yusuf with our possessions, and a wolf ate him." Surah Yusuf, Ayah 17. Yaqub was suspicious of their story. He, in his heart, believed his son was still alive, and that the brothers were likely enticed by Shaitan to do evil. He remarked that the wolf was indeed merciful to have eaten his son up without tearing his shirt. He bore the bereavement with patience and prayed for his son's safe return. Meanwhile, Yusuf Alaihissalam managed to cling to a stone ledge, and he prayed fervently to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant him salvation. Soon, a caravan bound for Egypt stopped at this well to fetch water. The water drawer hauled up his bucket, and he was shocked to see the boy clinging to the rope. The caravan people immediately shackled Yusuf and took him along to Egypt. The word quickly spread throughout Egypt that a strikingly handsome and athletic boy was to be auctioned. This news piqued the interest of the wealthy and elite bidders, eager to see if the rumors were true. The auction went wild, with bids escalating rapidly. Ultimately, he was sold to the highest bidder, who was none other than Al-Aziz, the chief minister of Egypt. Yusuf's new master, who had no children, was completely taken with Yusuf. He told his wife to take good care of Yusuf, and they could either use him as a slave or perhaps even adopt him as their son. Yusuf not only grew up to be a handsome young man, but was also blessed with exceptional knowledge and wisdom by Allah. It is narrated in the famous hadith when the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven during the night journey. He went through the gate and entered the third heaven, where he saw Yusuf, who is said to have been given half of world beauty. Sahih Muslim 162a. The Quran also reflects on Yusuf's virtues, stating, "And when Yusuf reached maturity, we gave him judgment and knowledge. And thus we reward the doers of good." Surah Yusuf, Ayah 22. His integrity and honesty captivated the heart of Al-Aziz, who entrusted Yusuf to be in charge of his household. It was during this period Yusuf was confronted with his second trial. Zuleika, Al-Aziz's wife, watched Yusuf day after day, her feelings intensifying to the point of obsession. Overwhelmed by her desires, she became desperate to fulfill them. One day, when her husband was away from home, she closed the doors and invited Yusuf to her. Yusuf, fearing Allah, replied, "I seek refuge in Allah. Indeed, He is my master, who has made good my residence. Indeed, wrongdoers will not succeed." Surah Yusuf, Ayah 23. He turned away and ran towards the closed door to escape. Zuleika chased after him in desperation and grabbed his shirt from the back, which caused it to rip. The door opened, and Al-Aziz entered. Ashamed, she ran to him and cried, "What is the recompense of the one who intended evil for your wife, but that he be imprisoned or a painful punishment?" Surah Yusuf, Ayah 23.
Yusuf Alaihissalam was baffled. He continued to deny his mistress's claim, saying, "It was she who sought to seduce me." Al-Aziz was a fair man. He was confused and unsure of whom to believe. So, he consulted his wife's cousin for advice. If his shirt is torn from the front, then she has told the truth, and he is of the liars. Surah Yusuf, Ayah 26.
Thus, Yusuf's innocence was proven. Al-Aziz apologized for his wife's indecency and swore Yusuf to secrecy. Nevertheless, the story of Zuleika's pursuit spread. Other women began ridiculing her character. Distressed, Zuleika planned to prove to them her helpless reaction to Yusuf's extraordinary handsomeness. Hence, she invited these women to a banquet at her residence one day. There, she served them fruit along with knives. When the women were happily chatting away while slicing fruits, Zuleika summoned Yusuf. The women looked up at him. Astonished at such angelic beauty, they cut their hands without realizing they had. Zuleika seized the moment to announce that this was the man for whom she was blamed. She then warned Yusuf that if he denied her again, he would be imprisoned, to which Yusuf replied, "My lord, prison is more to my liking than that to which they invite me." Surah Yusuf, Ayah 33. That night, Zuleika convinced her husband that the only way to safeguard her honor and his prestige was to imprison Yusuf. This was a tough decision for Al-Aziz. He knew of Yusuf's innocence and believed him to be trustworthy, but nevertheless, he agreed with his wife. Thus, Yusuf was unjustly imprisoned. Yusuf, years in prison. During Yusuf's time in prison, he was bestowed with the ability to interpret dreams. Around the same time, two other men were sentenced to prison. The first was a cupbearer to the king, and the other was the king's chef. Yusuf's cellmates, mesmerized by his piety, sought him to have their dreams explained. One dreamt that he was serving the king wine, and the other was carrying bread on his head, which two birds were eating up.
Yusuf Alaihissalam initially called them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah then interpreted, "O two companions of prison, as for one of you, he will give drink to his master of wine. But as for the other, he will be crucified, and the birds will eat from his head. The matter has been decreed, about which you both inquire." Surah Yusuf, Ayah 41. And he said to the one he knew would go free, "Mention me before the king." Surah Yusuf, Ayah 42.
But Shaitan made him forget the mention to his master, and Yusuf remained in prison for several years. Still, he made patience his own and spent those years in remembrance of Allah. The king has a dream. One day the king of Egypt had an odd dream. He summoned his men and said, "Indeed, I have seen 7 fat cows being eaten by 7 that were lean, and 7 green spikes of grain, and others that were dry. O eminent ones, explain to me my vision, if you should interpret vision." The cupbearer, who immediately remembered his companion in prison, informed the king of Yusuf and his impeccable dream interpretations. The king sent his cupbearer to prison to meet with Yusuf and inquire about this peculiar dream. Yusuf, was overjoyed at the sight of his companion and knew that this was indeed the plan of Allah. He narrated to him, "You will plant for 7 years consecutively, and what you harvest leave in its spikes, except a little from which you will eat. Then will come after that 7 difficult years, which will consume what you advanced, saved for them, except a little from which you will store. Then will come after that a year in which the people will be given rain, and in which they will press olives and grapes." Surah Yusuf, Ayah 47 to 49. So the king summoned the women involved in the incident. Among them were the women who cut their hands, and they spoke of Yusuf's innocence before the king, saying, "Allah forbid. We know about him no evil." Surah Yusuf, Ayah 51. He, wife of Al-Aziz, was trapped. She confessed to the king, "Now the truth has become evident. It was I who sought to seduce him, and indeed he is truthful." Surah Yusuf, Ayah 51. Thus Yusuf's innocence was proven. Released from prison, Yusuf stood before the king to thank him for his generosity. Yusuf greatly impressed the king. After losing his freedom and being falsely imprisoned for many years, he wasn't angry, seeking revenge. He was composed and showed the noblest of qualities. Because of this, the king felt comfortable appointing Yusuf to a high position. Yusuf asked if he could be made the storekeeper over the storehouses across his land. He wanted to be a controller over the granaries, to ensure they were well equipped to endure the long famine. It was not out of self-interest, but a personal responsibility he felt to make sure people would not die due to shortages. Yusuf harvested and stored crops during the 7 years of fertility. Then, as predicted, came the years of famine that also reached the household of his father Jacob in Canaan. Jacob sent all his sons except Benjamin to Egypt to purchase provisions. Yusuf immediately recognized his brothers and provided for them, but they did not recognize him. And why would they? To them, Yusuf had passed away years ago. Yusuf casually inquired about their family. The brothers said, "We are 11 brothers, the children of a noble prophet. The youngest is at home, tending to the needs of our aging father." And a sudden rush of emotion, tears welled up in Yusuf's eyes, his heart heavy longing for home to see his father and younger brother. Struggling to regain his composure, he managed to ask, "Are you truthful people?" Confused, they replied, "What reason should we have to state an untruth?" Yusuf informed them that if they brought their brother back with them the next time, he would reward them with double the rations. But if they failed to do so, he would limit their measure. He wanted to make sure they would fulfill his command. As an additional precaution, Yusuf ordered one of his servants to put their money back in their bags so that when they returned home, they'd have enough money to return and purchase more.